Is Kent Hughes about to complete his roster transformation by acquiring a second offensive center like Robert Thomas or even Sidney Crosby, proving that Phillip Danault was just the opening chapter of a much larger story? The dust from the Phillip Danault trade has barely settled at the Bell Center, and blockbuster rumors are already roaring back with full force. On Tuesday, December 30th, 2025, reports from Elias Edmondson and insider David Pagnotta from Sportsnet confirm Kent Hughes hasn't closed the shop. The veteran Danault acquisition was a vital defensive band-aid, but complete roster surgery requires another piece. The Canadiens are actively monitoring the market for an impactful offensive second center, and the names on the wish list range from the stellar Robert Thomas to the legendary Sidney Crosby. The 2025 to 2026 season has been an emotional roller coaster. After a blistering start with 9 wins in the first 12 games, the team hit a wall in November where roster fragility was exposed. Hughes' response was swift. He brought in Alexander Texier, who's been useful with 6 points in 15 games, and repatriated Phillip Danault from the Kings for a second-round pick. But Danault, at 32 years old with only 5 points in 30 games at the time of the trade, came to lead by defensive example, not to be the goal-scoring engine behind Nick Suzuki. The emergence of Oliver Kapanen has been one of the year's best stories. The youngster assumed the responsibility of being the second-line center and did very well. However, relying on a prospect to carry an offensive line toward the playoffs is risky. It can work for a while, but he's still young. Hughes wants certainty. He wants someone who pushes Kapanen to the third line, where he can dominate, or to the wing, creating enviable center depth. Suzuki, new second center, Danault, Evans, or Kapanen. That's a championship spine. The report throws 2 names into the fire that would make any fan break into a cold sweat. Robert Thomas from the St. Louis Blues keeps appearing in rumors. Thomas is an elite passer, young, and fits the age window of Suzuki and Caulfield. He'd be expensive, first-round picks plus top prospects, but he'd solve the problem for a decade. That's the kind of acquisition that defines an era. Then there's Sidney Crosby. Yes, that Crosby. The text explicitly mentions, as well as Sidney Crosby. If the Penguins decide to rebuild, remember the Kalak trade and the possible Jared departure. Crosby might want one final run in a passionate hockey market, playing for his childhood team, being coached by Martin St. Louis. The narrative writes itself, but the obstacle is clear. It depends on the price, timing, and player approval. What separates Montreal from most contenders is flexibility. The Canadiens have what most competitors don't: draft picks, young players, and most importantly, the flexibility to maneuver without cornering themselves. David Pagnotta was explicit. If there's an opportunity to bring in a second center in the future, the Habs will jump on it. That's what they still want. Danault wasn't the main course. He was the appetizer. The main course is still in the oven. This connects directly to your interest in veteran center acquisitions. You've been tracking rumors about veteran centers like Nazem Kadri and Ryan O'Reilly joining the Canadiens. Now we're seeing that Hughes' ambition extends beyond just defensive stability. He wants offensive firepower at the position. Thomas represents the young, dynamic option. Crosby represents the legendary, championship-experienced option. Both would fundamentally transform Montreal's identity. The conclusion is unavoidable. Danault is an important step, but feels more like a first chapter than conclusion of Kent Hughes' work. The Habs GM has proven he's not afraid to spend assets. The second-round pick for Danault was a fair price. Now the league waits to see if he has the courage to go all in for a Thomas or Crosby. Hughes' phone battery must be running low from all the calls. This is a kind of aggressive roster construction that wins championships. You don't settle for incremental improvements. You identify the holes, and you fill them with elite talent. Danault addressed a defensive need. Now Hughes is hunting for the offensive catalyst. If he lands Thomas or Crosby, Montreal transforms from playoff hopeful into legitimate Eastern Conference threat. Should Kent Hughes pursue Robert Thomas aggressively despite the high cost? Or should he take the ultimate risk and try to bring Sidney Crosby home to finish his career in Montreal? Is Kapanen ready to handle second-line responsibilities? Or does the team need a proven veteran? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit that like button if you think Hughes is about to orchestrate the blockbuster that defines Montreal's championship window.